Celiac, celiac, facial movement, and social engagement. Dr. David Jubb. Face muscle function derive from gills after the 4th week of gestation in embryology. Muscles of the face make up our emotional expressive organ. Opening and closing of the nose, mouth, ears, and eyes are organized and eyes organized by functions of sensory like and dislike. Pleasure causes activation of the zygoinchicus major muscle. Pleasure causes activation of the zygoinchicus major muscle, showing us a characteristic smile. The eyes remain soft, moist, and unblinking. The chin is pulled in slightly and the eyebrows slightly raised. This is kid rapport. However, aversion causes activation of the orbital muscles, pressing of the mouth, pressing the lips together, and furrowing of the corrugator supercilii. The brow, drawing the eyebrows together. A life colloid is drawn toward what sustains and repelled by what is sensorily unpleasant. Vestibular body movement engagement of the human body is to attract what is like and repel what other than allows our organism to remain whole. Vestibular movement toward and away are characteristic behaviors of pleasure and aversive neurology, respectively. As the resource for the organism is large enough, it collapses any challenged physiological state. In neurology, this has to be more than 78% of the total of all nerve involvement. Facial nerve apraxia results from immune assault of strange undigestible protein, as in celiac, inflammation of the mucous membrane of the intestine. Strange protein in the body's water has a myriad of symptoms behaviorally. Preferred modes of sorting information as body nutrient or toxin can have got stuck because of the vagal brake having been activated. As assimilation of nutrient information was without body, overall coping. The body physiology of the vagal enteric nervous system inhibited both excitatory and inhibitory nerve input. Aversive neurophysiology to strange body toxin can have been about getting away, and control of things being outside of self, rather than moving toward and control being within. Facial movement of the classic celiac sufferer can range in degree of aversive componentry accessed. For instance, the tegmentum, aversive neurology, is recruited by eyes squinting and also twitching. Only then can one fully have accessed rage within anger. Information molecules of strange undigestible protein consumption can easily cross-react with important body information overall processing. All strange protein wrongfully in the bloodstream act as xeno-opiates and estrogen. Strange heroin steroidal-like molecule. Luster of the eyes and pink rosiness of the skin's complexion can have been replaced by paste and grain. As one is vibrant, this can be seen in the way facial movement is. Physiology of things being integrated is shown with eye contact, soft, moist, and unblinking, chin in, eyebrows slightly raised with facial expression having simply a timeless inner smile. This is an inner bright state of being portrayed, yet little discernible necessarily shown outwardly. Empty, timeless facial expression is as if the mind is asleep. A very fine vibration, like porcelain, is shown in facial skin luster. Ego defense, because of weak relationship characteristics, can have caused the celiac sufferer to have poor eye contact, more body facial shifts, internal processing, looking down below and up, around, and above, having accessed aversive focused judgment and attention deficit disorder. As the eyes remain level, internal processing is as an adult. Otherwise, the celiac sufferer can have been left with a physiology of judgment that is. What happened here? Otherwise, the celiac sufferer can have been left with a physiology of judgment that is chin out, eyes looking down and up, and constantly changing. The facial movement is closed and away from the head, is generally positioned forward and down. And down. Startle reflex. All of this can be displayed along with cataleptic staring spells of other than being here in the present and having a grain paste like skin luster for facial expression. Neural apraxia in chronic celiac condition can have manifest itself as a stillness of facial expression between the eyes and the top lip. It is this facial muscle componentry that allow one to sense how another is feeling about things. Between the eyes and the top lip. It is this facial muscle componentry that allow one to sense how another is feeling about things. The classic celiac sufferer can lack true remorse for wrongdoing and have built up ego defense because of feelings of inadequacy. Facial expression can range from emotional flashing, contrived movement, as if the gesture is an afterthought, from internal processing. Facial skin luster around the eyes can look baggy and strained. The eyes can range from wet to dry eyes because of aversive componentry can have been the celiac's preferred mode of neurological operating. Hmm. Facial skin luster around the eyes can look baggy and strained. The eyes can range from wet to dry eyes because of aversive componentry can have been the celiac's preferred mode of neurological operating. The top lip can characteristically be pushed slightly down. The mouth and lips are set more tight, so the mouth edges are slightly depressed. If uncontrolled internal dialogue was present, the mouth is generally also pulled slightly back, and facial muscles can look tight. With jaw clenching and knuckle and neck cracking as a neurological behavior expressive tic. Healthy, normal celiac sufferers have generally got characteristically asymmetrical swollen facial lips. Lip color can be bright, slightly dry red to pasty in color. Massage of the mastication and underneath jaw muscles can have a positive resetting of the vagal brake, allowing the central nervous system to return to normal rather than having been coded for alarm. Life food nutritional fasting and other therapeutic body work can assist drain the middle ear, clearing nose and eye dryness and congestion of the typical celiac sufferer. Celiac sufferers can have varying degrees of social engagement dysfunction. One can witness a lack of natural facial expression that flows from one movement to the next. A voluntary smile or tightened eyebrow crease is generally the celiac sufferer's way to communicate rapport. Yet, as indicated, these facial movements other display subtle involuntary movement, yet are gestures that are the result of afterthought and voluntary habit. Investigation into emotion has shown that facial movement influences how well we feel. Yet with celiac, gestures of emotional flashing coming from things contrived inside. Swallowing, eating, speaking, and singing can have portrayed disrupted behavior for the celiac sufferer. Dysfunctional social engagement systems can be portrayed by irritating speech, things framed negatively. The celiac sufferer can have only a value for internal dialogue without any value for the voice listened to and spoken externally. Symptoms of behavioral flight, fright, and fight response can cause chronic neck and back stiffness from shoulder and back posture slouching. Weak ego defense is shown typically because the head is generally in front of the heart. Sternomastoid activation. And pectoral and gut muscle activation, contracting and pulling the body inward. Contracting and reducing body postural openness, causing only on or off behavior. Tension and migraine and sinus headache can have been an intermittent condition of celiac as it engaged the trigeminal nerve and activated the brain meningeal covering to have responded as if there was an alarm. Excess of iron deposit in the basal ganglia, nerve root of the brain can have caused migraine and tension and cluster-like headache. Iron deposit, nerve force harmoniously functioning allows joy to experience what it is to be a well-functioning social being. Social dysfunction can come because one was short-sighted. Seeing the lips so one gets what's said initiates functional social engagement. A signal one is listening is in eye contact in communicating with other people. These behaviors are functionally necessary for a mammal to survive. A reptile's brain our brainstem, has pleasure and aversive components. Yet They other than have nur- nurture young. A mammal is protected and taught skill to survive. These traits for us ensure our survival and are other than random. Behaviors can have become hardwired into the nervous system. Celiac can have affected the cranial nerves, so this social engagement, body componentry, is disrupted along with the body's hormonal system. Social behavior takes place more in a stable environment. The mind's mobilization is engaged without physical activity. Activation of the ventral vagal system allows for metabolism to be sped up or slowed down. The heart can have remained calm even under some physical exertion. Disruption in social units can have allowed abandonment, harm, and controlling others. Social engagement requires self confidence and treating others with integrity and respect. Yet for the celiac sufferer, if that strategy other than worked, a stress response can have triggered the vagal brake to become active. Mental stress coupled with celiac can activate the autonomic nervous system to have been in fight or flight mode. Only the slightest, smallest matter can instigate a short fuse. Fight mode requires others to be the enemy. All memory, learning, and behavior is state specific. Perceptual narrowing. Perceptual narrowing is a very common response as one was in fight-flight mode. Pupils contract to pinpricks because of epinephrine and adrenocorticotropic hormone. Fight mode can have required one to have something to avoid and to have worried about. A vagal brake mode of the autonomic nervous system and hormonal imbalance that was the result of strange protein consumption can have only prompted one to justify one's emotion by what's contrived. Mammals have ways to flick a bad experience off. Yet, a person can have been stuck in an emotionally negative state because of a defective social engagement enteric vagus system. Past experience that was negative can have become misstored and affected mental processing style. Normal processing of trauma has the brain release the memory by going from the stressed state to resourceful and running through behavioral syntax this way that ends up for the person with a resource state. As aversive neurological componentry was all that was accessed, it can have overridden the pleasure neurological componentry. As one state neurologically inhibits the other componentry. Aversive neurophysiology neurologically inhibits whole brain functioning. Yet, as indicated, if the resource state is large enough, it collapses any stuck state into it. Interest and pleasure create whole brain functioning and integrated behavior. Interest engages the whole mantle of the brain cortex, whereas aversion activates limited brain function. Celiac sufferers can have been locked in shock mode, though having given up. As social engagement was other than adequate, a response of stress is felt by the celiac sufferer, and that leads to parasympathetic immobilization. A normal state of mind is a high level of productivity. Serotonin is important in modulation of psychotic symptoms in schizophrenic condition. 95% of all serotonin is produced by the brain of the gut. Yet with celiac sufferers, neuromodulators like gastrin, secretin, GABA, serotonin, dopamine, and acetylcholine can have all fallen short, and in some circumstances, like dopamine, can have been in excess. Circumstances like dopamine can have been in excess. Remaining calm requires a proper dopamine serotonin axis, and this assists with social engagement. Huh? Remaining calm requires a proper dopamine serotonin axis, and this assists with social engagement, control of appetite, improving sleep and mood. Life Food Nutrition clears strange protein, and Jubb's cell rejuvenation can clear debris and intestinal inflammation. Calm anxiety, reduce PMS symptoms, headache, and fibromyalgia. Persistent impulses, thoughts, feeling that was intrusive, senseless. Compulsion is intentional behavior acted out in response to an obsession. Compulsion can have interfered with normal everyday functioning. The gut's brain has a great capacity to feel. It is an organ of intrinsic mediated reflexes in the absence of input from the brain and spine. Neurotransmitters are words communicating to cells within their control. The multiplicity of neurotransmitters of the enteric system suggests a brain-like complexity. Contentment and nausea. Disgust. Is shown by facial movement. Celiac sufferers can have an expression that is mask-like. Is shown by facial movement. Celiac sufferers can have an expression that is mask-like. Some 13% of all female university students have been shown to suffer from bulimia, celiac, and post-encephalitic syndrome. Manifests itself as more hyperactivity in male children and in females as primarily an appetite disorder. Cranial nerve palsy. Cranial nerve palsy. Loss of pleasure, perceptual componentry. Perceptual handicap. Cognitive disorder. Discriminatory perceptual loss. Visual defects. Eyesight and movement disturbance. Headache and enuresis. Bedwetting. Frequency of urination are all symptoms suffered by the celiac sufferer. As cranial nerves would have become impaired, the face can have taken on a rigid look. Cranial nerves 1X and X. The glossopharyngeal and vagus nerves are affected in minimal brain dysfunction and can have created social engagement, breathing, and respiratory difficulty. Enuresis and manifestation of symptoms of celiac can change over time. Overactivity and inattention in childhood can lead to social and academic failure, social incompetence, and poor social esteem as an adult. Prospering and surviving requires information from the environment to be processed. Information processed by the brain is perceived by sensory organs. Information processing can other than occur if one was diminished neurophysiologically. Vital connection between sensory, motor neurons can have only processed fragments of information. Celiac can inhibit proper digestive function because strange undigestible protein creates mucus. Intrinsic factor binds with cobalamin from food. B12 is formed by complexing intrinsic factor produced by parietal cells lining the gut binding with cobalamin. This complexed nutrient is only recognized in the last section of the small intestine where intestinal flora produce B12. B12 is involved in nerve function and blood formation. Parietal cells that make hydrochloric acid also produce intrinsic factor. Life colloid dominate as mitochondria in parietal cells, for they are designed for churning out proteins for export. Intrinsic factor is stored in an enclosed membrane package and secreted, and hypochloric acid arises outside the parietal cell by pumping hydrogen from the blood into the stomach, and chloride follows hydrogen, making hydrochloric acid. Parietal cells exchange hydrogen ions for potassium ions. Potassium flows from the stomach contents back the other way. Life colloid are an extraordinary apparatus for generating ATP and a huge membrane to hold necessary proton pumps. Oxygen is burned by life colloid to produce ATP, and electron, proton, and neutron are combined to make protein involved in manufacturing DNA and RNA for intrinsic factor. Facial expression that grew from gills that are involved in mobilization of oxygen from blood are implicated as indicated in opening and closing of the nose, mouth, ears, and eyes, and are organized around functions of pleasure and aversive neural componentry. Strange protein consumption can have inhibited this whole apparatus. There can have been immune cross-reactivity with similar body protein, like parietal cells lining the gut wall. Both intrinsic factor and hydrochloric acid are important to have proper cardiovascular function and nerve force. Gills for fish, our face muscles came from allow cardio-inhibitory tone to be capable of rapid shifts. Originally, gills needed to be able to supply a fish with added oxygen and to reduce carbon dioxide, exchanging gas between blood and the water the fish was living in. Metabolic output could dynamically change to match challenge of environmental circumstance. Rapid engagement and disengagement characterizes the vagal brake. A neurotransmitter and chemical messenger, acetylcholine, allows parietal cells to be vital responders, turning on or off depending on change of circumstance. Parietal cells Parietal cells are aroused by another neurotransmitter, gastrin. Gastrin provides a thermostat action, holding acidity of the stomach constant. Mucus secreting cells are also innervated by nerves. The ventral vagal enteric nervous system has input into production of digestive function. Anxiety can have made the stomach acidic. The head phase of digestion can have been taken over by brain dysfunction. Both stomach and intestines can have been quite activated. Feeling grounded and light or queasiness and heavy are based on enteric sensation. Ulceration has been shown to result from, among other things, mental stress, heart racing, mouth dry, and pupils opened wide is the effect of excited, sympathetic activity without inhibition, parasympathetic. Wrongfully strange molecules of an undigestible nature having entered the blood can mimic body signaling molecules and receptor binding sites. Cardio-inhibitory tone is dynamically shifted to meet environmental challenge. This rapid regulation characterizes the vagal brake. This enteric vagal system allows engagement or disengagement to the environment without mobilization of the sympathetic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system has substrates of three emotional, primitive language systems. The enteric vagal system para and sympathetic system represents an acceptation that has emerged to extract oxygen from water initially. Social behavior follows via facial movement and vocalization. This system allows for contingent social communication, verbal facial behavior. Prosocial behavior is a low metabolic demand as one is integrated. Yet the mind is the body's experience of itself. One lives what one speaks, and speaks what one lives next. Rapid contingent switching of behavioral engagement and disengagement involves this ventral vagal enteric system, as in listening, then speaking. This first evolved nervous system arrangement controls lower autonomic nervous systems like the para and sympathetic nervous system. The nervous system is always selecting a conservative metabolic course. The VVC provides strong mobilization and inhibition of cardiovascular and gastrointestinal response. Where senses of sound and sight can have been impaired, this ventral vagal complex can have other than allowed a normal socialization engagement pattern. Verbal facial mechanisms can have become impaired in the celiac sufferer and led to weak ego defense behaviorally.